Recovery is one of the most important aspects in an athlete's schedule. If an athlete's body doesn't have time to recover from a session or a long training block, they stay in a constant state of fatigue and never really adapt to training. And I guess the main reasons we train is to get better. But if we don't follow any appropriate recovery protocols, you start to lose the ability to improve, and you also put yourself at a greater risk of injury as well too. So there's many forms and types of recovery. Common things which you've probably heard of before, such as sleep, nutrition, and hydration, make up the main components of a recovery protocol. And then you have other things such as massages and ice baths and compression garments and other things that kind of make up the remainder of what a recovery sort of protocol looks like. So the main purpose of this little lecture slide here is just to go through some recovery strategies to help you guys out personally with your own recovery protocols to make sure that you're playing the best football you possibly can. So the first part of this little presentation is just to talk about sleep and to go into, I guess, the importance of sleep and what starts to occur and happen in your body when you don't get good quality and quantity of sleep. So this little 8-step process here kind of talks through some of those things, which we'll talk about now. So number one, reduction in sleep quality and quantity could have a result in autonomic nervous system imbalance, simulating symptoms of overtraining syndrome. So that's things like feeling like you're under a state of constant fatigue, you're lethargic, you feel like you can't go to training, you just always want to be in bed, you don't want to get out of bed. So our autonomic nervous system controls things like our heart rate, our breathing, our respiratory rate, all really important bodily functions that we need to be able to function, not just as athletes, but as just general human beings. So when we're not getting that sleep, it starts to have an impact on our whole body and our whole system. The second one is growth hormone, which is fundamental for tissue regeneration and growth, which releases through phases of deep sleep. And for you guys in particular, being around that 16, 17, 18 years of age, testosterone or growth hormone, mainly being testosterone, is hugely important for your growth and development as athletes. So not getting into those deep phases of sleep actually reduce your ability to recover, build muscle, and again get better as athletes. Number three, which is really important, and we touch on again in the next slide, but you're actually at a 1.7 times greater risk of being injured if you're not getting 8 hours of sleep or more, which we'll again go through in the next slide regarding some research with that. Number four, increasing in pro-inflammatory cytokines following sleep loss could promote immune system dysfunction. So essentially, if you're not getting enough recovery and enough sleep in particular, your immune system's going to be a lot more prone to getting infections and getting sick, and you can't actually clear that sickness or those infections away as quickly as possible. Possibly affecting your performance out on the football field. Sleep loss is also associated with slower and less accurate cognitive performance. So you can't think as clearly in the classroom, or you can't think as clearly on the football field to make a decision. And again, that places you at a potential risk of injury because you're not thinking straight. When sleep's reduced to less than 7 hours in healthy adults, cognitive performance is poorer in tests of alertness, reaction time, memory, and decision making. And again, going back to that sort of scenario, being on the football field, if your decision making's down or your alertness and reaction time's down, that could mean that you potentially that could result in you potentially getting whacked or being tackled or being hit, which again opens you up for that potential risk of injury. Not to mention that your performance is going to decrease because you won't be able to hit a target or make that clear decision to be able to kick the ball or make that handball or take that set shot on goal. Number 7, sufficient sleep should be obtained following training sessions. as perceptual and motor learning processes continue throughout subsequent sleep. So that essentially just means that if you go to training and learn a new skill or learn a new tactic or game plan throughout your training session, and you go home and you don't get a good night quality sleep, your body and your memory don't actually remember as well as what you possibly could from that training session. So you're not actually taking in all that hard work that you've put in at training. It's essentially just been thrown out the window because of not getting a good quality night's sleep. And the last one here, which I'm sure we're all guilty for, but 2 hours of exposure to light from self-luminous electronic displays, obviously being phones, tablets, PlayStation, Xboxes, whatever it is, can suppress melatonin by about 22% and affect sleep. So melatonin is a chemical within our body, and when it's released from our body, it allows us to go to sleep. So if we look at lights from a computer screen or a TV or a phone, it actually reduces the melatonin that is sent by the body, and it makes it a lot harder for us to fall asleep and get a good quality night's sleep. So the next slide here is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. I think it was step 3 in those 8 steps. So the likelihood of injury based on hours of sleep per night. And there's a lot of studies that are now coming out showing that athletes who sleep on average of less than 8 hours per night have a 1.7 times greater risk of being injured than those who sleep greater than 8 hours. So I guess 8 hours is almost like the magic number, that if you get that or more, you're reducing that risk of potentially getting injured out on the football field. And obviously, the less you sleep, the higher that risk of injury starts to, I guess, creep up. So that's all the bad stuff, but what can we actually do now to enhance our sleep and ensure that we're getting appropriate recovery through sleep? So I really like this 9-step process that you can kind of check through individually and see where your current situation sits at and compare and start to make some changes within your routine to ensure that you're getting the best quality night's sleep you can. So number 1 is obviously having a quiet environment to stop from obviously waking yourself up. That's pretty straightforward. The second one is room temperature, so around 18 degrees, and not having the room too cold or too hot, so you're not waking up at night having to turn an air conditioner off or having to pull doonas off because you're too hot. Number 3, ensure that your bedding clothing doesn't cause an environment that's too hot, which is what I've just spoken about. Number 4, trying to get into a really good sleep routine. So trying to set that body clock to be consistent with going to bed every single night around the same time will definitely help you fall into sleep and getting a better night quality sleep. Number 5, if some of you drink coffee or energy drinks, that's obviously going to affect your ability to fall asleep because they're stimulants. So avoiding caffeine and food as well leading up to sleep, roughly around the 2-hour mark is probably ideal, but that can start to be a little bit individual based on the person. Number 6, we talked about this before as well too, avoiding the use of computer, tablet, TV before sleep, just based on that luminous light that comes off the back of the screen, reducing the melatonin, so obviously affecting your ability to fall asleep. Napping no later than mid-afternoon, and I know a lot of you are probably tired throughout the afternoon and want to nap. Napping isn't a bad thing, but trying to keep your nap time to 15 to 20 minutes, and the best way you can do that is actually time yourself to have some sort of food or some sort of caffeinated drink before you have a nap, and within 15 to 20 minutes that caffeine or the food starts to kind of wake you up, and you don't feel like you're all hazy and groggy when you wake up. Typically, what you would experience from a nap or sleeping longer than 20 minutes. So that's a good strategy there if you can squeeze in a nap if you've got time throughout the day. Obviously, trying to get at least 7 hours of sleep a night. I'd even change that to be 8. Like I said before in the previous slide, around that 8-hour mark is that good number to reduce the risk of injury. And the last one here is to ensure a dark room with no light source present. So trying to block out the windows, any sort of clocks or TVs or something that illuminates the room. Try to reduce, if not remove them from the room. Because again, light will start to wake you up. So it's not just all about sleep from a recovery standpoint. There's a number of different things we can look at and get into. The 4 R's here kind of put you in the right track towards getting appropriate recovery after a game of football, or just throughout trading, or just generally in life. And these are in no particular order either, but being able to refuel, so get good quality food back into your system, as well as hydrating as well too. So we need that water and we need electrolytes back in our system as quickly as possible to start that recovery process. That'll then allow the repair process to occur, and that growth hormone that we talked about earlier will start to play an important factor in that, and in particular putting on muscle mass and size. And probably one of the most important ones is just being able to relax and chill out. Obviously, you guys have a lot going on within your lives, being football and school and social life, and probably having some sort of casual part-time job. So just trying to find times to relax and chill out and kind of get away from the stress of life, and anything else that's going on plays a really important role in the general sort of recovery paradigm. And then the last slide here, just to finish off, is all about trying to get the 90% right first. So there's a lot of fancy gadgets and gimmicks out there. I'm sure you've seen through social media of elite athletes doing it. Most of the time they're doing it because they're getting endorsed from that type of product, so they're getting paid to promote that type of product. Most of it's complete nonsense. So if you are looking at recovery strategies, the 3 biggest things that you really need to be looking for is obviously sleep, which is what I've just been talking about pretty much for the whole presentation. Nutrition, which I can't get into too much, but we'll go through in another subject later down the track, as well as hydration as well too. So if you're getting the sleep, hydration and nutrition aspects right, they're your big rocks right there. They're your big bang for your buck things that are going to make a massive impact on your body and how you recover, as well as how you can play your football, or the quality of football that you can play. So the little things, the 10 percenters, such as self-myofascial release, so like your foam rolling and your trigger point spiky ball release stuff, pool recoveries, cold water immersion, so your ice baths or your hot baths or hot showers, your compression garments, and static stretching. Not to say that they're not they're bad things to do, but they're probably not the most important things to do straight away, particularly post exercise or post game. Again, going back to sleep, nutrition, hydration, you get those big 3 right, you're on the right track, and then you can kind of top up with all those other little bits and pieces. But there's actually not a great deal of research to support those 10 percenters. But I always suggest, if they make you feel good and you like doing them, continue to do them and keep them as part of your routine. If you feel like they don't really improve or enhance what you feel post game, or 1 day or 2 days later post game, then it's probably not a necessary thing that you guys need to do. But again, get that nutrition, get that sleep, get that hydration right, and it's going to put you on the right track.